we look at education in life and we look at people who are wanting to educate and teach others the quality and value that the Jewish people around the world are giving to others. Michael Dickson, our guest today, is the definition of education, is the definition of showing the world what Jews have done and what they're able to give. If you look at Google, Apple, Facebook, there's so many Jews that are integral parts of those companies. We look at Michael Dickson right up there with Google. I would say he's probably one small tier under, just not public company, more on the private side. But we look at Michael as one of those people who are educators. He's an author of Is Resilience, which is similar to our podcast, Resilient Riches, and talks about the resilience of Jews around the world and what they've really done. It's an honor.
To say welcome to another podcast.
Yes, it is a welcome to another
Resilient Riches. You forgot to put our introduction in.
Yes, I did forget that, but because Michael, I feel like I'm starstruck. So thanks, Michael, for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'll do your introduction. Welcome to Resilient Riches.
Exactly.
You learn
Perfect.
how to live a more resilient.
People might not know where they are.
Correct. And riches is not just money. And I know nonprofits are not known for their money determinations. But Michael, give us a 2-minute, 3-minute background about you. We love what you're doing. It's incredible what you're doing. You're doing the definition of what we've been telling people. You're using your incredible platform to push out good, which is so unique. And you put your business on the line. You put your life on the line. Hillel Fol did the same thing. Eitan Shidiat did the same thing. All these people are doing the same thing. And there's this trend going on with the leaders of the community. And that's really what you're doing. Can you give us a little background about you, how you got to this point? And we'll go from there. I'm very excited for this conversation.
That's a very kind and generous introduction. I am coming to you from Israel, which has been my home for almost 18 years. In the summer of 2006, I got on a plane together with my wife, and we took our 2.5-year-old daughter and our then 9-month-old son from the arms of my parents, who came to see us off in London, and moved here during the Second Lebanon War. And at the time, we were interviewed by 2 major British newspapers as to why any self-respecting British citizen would want to up sticks and move to a war zone, because the Second Lebanon War was playing out. And for us, that was just such a ridiculous question, because, of course, Israel is our home and it's where we need to be. And so it was obvious to us. We then went on to have 3 more kids. And I'm starting with my kids because you're talking about riches. And for me, those are our riches. That 2.5-year-old I mentioned, my daughter, is now an officer in the IDF. And I know that you served Yair, which is amazing.
It goes fast, doesn't it?
It goes so fast. It's like in the blink of an eye. And I actually can't believe it. And so it's been an amazing journey. But of course, in my professional life, I'm executive director of StandWithUs in Israel, and we are an educational nonprofit that is dedicated to fighting anti-Semitism and supporting Israel around the world. And this is where the rubber meets the road, as you know, because we're in the toughest of times. And so since October the 7th, and we can talk about it, it's been a whole different ballgame. But I'm privileged and I'm blessed, and I believe I have riches through the job that I'm able to do, which is to be a key part of a movement of people, both Jewish and non-Jewish, who want to stand up, make a difference, support the Jewish people, and support the state of Israel.
Yeah, it's really amazing that people are starting to stand up, and people were sitting before, and they were sitting on the sideline, and they didn't really see the problem. It reminds me a little bit of October 7th, that the Israeli army was kind of sitting on the sideline, hoping that everything's okay, and leaving. Okay, we gave them the keys. Yes, they want to kill us, but are they really going to do it? And then all of a sudden, we wake up, and they woke up a sleeping lion, in all honesty, and the lion is not just on the Israel Defense Force side. The lion's also on the public media, public outcry side of talking about the narrative. How are you changing the narrative to say pro-Israel and pro-Jewish and pro what our cause is? How are you doing that? What are the steps that you're taking?
Yeah, so we're a grassroots organization, and we're international. And we grew out of a living room, the living room of Jerry and Roz Rothstein, who, after a terrible murder back in 2001 of 2 Israelis, one of them American Israeli, Yosef Ishran and Kobe Mandel, who were not at school one day and were basically found beaten to death, bludgeoned to death, stoned to death in a cave in Tekoa so badly that they could only be identified by their dental records. And when we think of that, we think of what's just happened on October the 7th. But the truth is, this barbarity has been going on for a long time. These, they call it the first intifada or the second intifada, but to some extent, it's just one long war being waged at Israelis and, of course, by extension of that, the Jewish people. So when these two boys were murdered, it was almost in the press like they were being blamed for their own death. And so with that being the background of so much of the reporting and what they called the second intifada, Jerry and Rose got a whole bunch of people together and said, what are we doing here? How are we reaching out to people? How are we combating these lies? How are we arming our own young people with information and with facts? And from that, Stand With Us was born. Fast forward 22 years, and we haven't, we grew West Coast to East. We're all over the United States, in Canada, in Brazil, in Australia, in the UK, in Holland, South Africa, and other places. And we've got this framework now, this groundwork that we've built over the last 22 years, where we have amazing support on college campuses. We reach about 150,000 students annually to become student leaders and to fight anti-Semitism and support Israel. We work on the high school with about 100,000 teens annually every year. Middle school students, we have a middle school curriculum that runs in hundreds of schools across the US, working with thousands of young teens. We have a legal department that gives support to people facing, particularly young people facing BDS attempts or attempts to mark their grades down because they support Israel, and a whole bunch of other things, including we're very, very active, as you mentioned, on social media, which is so critical and important in these times. And so that combined is a very powerful force. And so we're trying to leverage that movement of people, that army of educators, if you like, to be as active as they can, particularly in the light of the October the 7th atrocities.
Well, it's certainly super important. I have one son, my youngest son. He's got one more semester at Rutgers, and the college campuses and everything that's been going on with Harvard, and I mean, it's just a crazy thing. So, how do you fight that? And it seems so prevalent, or at least where we are in the Northeast part.
Yeah, and we saw that congressional testimony, which I think opened a lot of people's eyes. It wasn't a big surprise to us at Stand With Us to see even the people on the upper echelons of university campuses be so ambivalent about anti-Semitism. I mean, if you're asked point blank whether calls to exterminate Jewish people is problematic on your campus, and your response is to check your notes before you even answer, that's indicative.
Context. It's not. You got to tell me about the context. I mean, it's absurd.
Right. The context. Tell me about the context, then I'll tell you if it's a bad thing, right? It's absurd on its face. And so we have to expose these things. And it's important for us that, sunlight is the best disinfectant, that whether it's university administrations who are not doing enough, or whether it's really racist, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel groups that are on campus, like Students for Justice in Palestine, for instance, that we shine a light on this and we take action anywhere we can. And on the flip side, that we empower young people, young Jews, anyone who wants to support Israel, to stand up and be counted and make sure that they're as informed as possible, as educated as possible, and as articulate as they can possibly be.
Yeah, we have a friend of ours, his wife is Chinese, he's Jewish, and his daughter comes home from university and says, Dad, I hate Jews. And he goes, what? You know that you're Jew? I mean, he views it as, you're Jewish. And he goes, no, I hate Jews. And they brought up some points to her. They overwhelmed her with information how the Jews are committing genocide, and which were the worst genocide population out there, because like the Gaza Strip has quadrupled in population. There's 2 million Arabs living in Israel. We're really, really bad at genocide just in general. But she was told that she had to pick a side. And because she was overwhelmed with information, she chose the side of anti-Jewish, not anti-Israel, anti-Jewish. And she's saying to people that she's Chinese, she's scared of her own identity. How are you talking to people like that who are on the fence, that they know that it's the right thing, but they're not really they're not getting educated. They're I would say the secular Jews, or the Jews that are already intermarried, things like that. How are you talking to the lonely Jews that don't know which way to turn to and that don't have formal education training, which is what you're doing?
Yeah, and for me, that's critically important. And the best thing is that they ask questions. Because what the other side does is they propagandize and they show one side of the story, or as in your example, they bully people into, taking a position, forcing them to take a position. Otherwise they will be ostracized. Otherwise they'll feel alienated, whatever it may be. And so for us, if we can meet people who are on that questioning journey, there's no question you can't ask. Israel has a solid case, and it's a case that can stand up to questioning, and it's a case that is a just cause. And so as long as people are asking questions, let's sit down and ask all the questions there are and answer them together. And one of the ways we do that is when we bring people here to Israel, whether they're on birthright programs or gap year programs, or if they're not Jewish, they're just on vacation or on some other trip, we host them at the Stand With Us Center in Jerusalem, which is across the street from the King David Hotel, very high tech with our amazing dynamic educators. And we take apart the tough questions, the allegations that are made against Israel, and look for the truth of it all. Israel can stand up to this criticism. By the way, it's fine to criticize Israel, right? If I want criticism of Israel, I live here. I just get into a cab and start talking to the driver. I'll get criticism of Israel. But where it crosses over into defamation, into delegitimization, into applying a unique double standard to the state of Israel, that's where things slip into anti-Semitism. So we need to define what anti-Semitism is so people understand it, so authorities understand it, and university administrations understand it. And we have to tell young people they can ask any questions they want, and we have to be there and available to answer them. And we need to teach young Jews their own narrative. Isn't it ridiculous that in this world of sound bites and TikTok and tweets and whatever else it may be, that young people cannot articulate their own identity? What does it mean to be a Jew? Where did Jews come from? Well, Chinese people come from China. Indians come from India. Jews come from Israel. It's where we're born. It's where our past is. It's where our present is. And it's where our future will be. If to be Jewish wherever you live is to be intrinsically connected to the Jewish homeland. We have to have people understand how to articulate that, those indigenous roots, to be able to articulate that so that their narrative, as people say nowadays, can stand as powerfully as other people's do in this world of ideas and conversations that we have.
I think you said one word to me that just resonated completely, and that's bullying. I mean, they're bullying us. They're standing up, and you look at the protests. There is something on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. They come and rip down an Israeli flag. I was listening the other day. They blocked off the entrances to the Williamsburg Bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge, the Holland Tunnel. I mean, they're just bullying. And I'm listening. I'm a big sports fan. I listen to the sports radio, and these people, like these are guys, they're getting tired of it. Like what happens if there's a pregnant woman that has to get to the hospital and they're blocking it. They're just bullying, sure. and that's,
it doesn't help the people of Gaza either, by the way, for them to do that. It doesn't. It's all posturing. It doesn't help the people of Gaza that somebody trying to get across the Brooklyn Bridge can't go and give birth in a hospital. And I think you're right. I think that the silent majority of people are fed up to the back teeth of it. They're seeing this for what it is, this bullying, this intimidation, and I don't think they're going to stand for it.
Do you think that the dynamic of these university students right now that are so loud and so vocal, do you think that they're going to change? Because the joke is that when you're in college, everyone's a liberal, college should be free for everybody. Then you take out all this debt, then you finish college, and now you start paying off your loans, and you're like, well, I don't want it to be free. I paid for it. And all of a sudden you become more and more, I wouldn't say right, but just more and more understanding of what actually happens in the global economy. Do you feel that these people will change? How do you see the next 10 years across university campuses?
Yeah, it's a big challenge, but I think what we have to do is peel people off where we can from a position they've been bullied into or a position they have fallen into through the lack of information. For me, I'm not interested in debating or engaging with BDS activists, those who want to boycott, divest, and sanction the state of Israel. I'm not interested in dialoguing with anti-Semites. They can show themselves for what they are. I'm not interested in talking to those people. And when we're talking about who to engage with at Stand With Us, those are not the people we want to engage with. We want to energize our base, our key people, Jewish people, people of all different faiths who have a heart for Israel, who want to support Israel. We want to engage with our base and reach out to that big 90% in the middle who don't have any information, who may not know anything about Israel, or who are getting only a diet of misinformation. So we have to peel the people off where we can so that they don't slip into the bad side. For me, for instance, on social media, the only time I'll engage with somebody a BDS activist or someone like that is if they have a large following. If it's somebody tweeting in their pajamas to their 3 followers in their basement, I don't need to engage with them as much as they may want to troll me. But if I feel there's someone on that side who has a large following, I will engage with them, not necessarily to convince them, but certainly to reach out to their audiences. And so one of the things we try and do is leverage people with large audiences, with big platforms, to step forward, and so we can reach out to as many people as possible and get the message to them.
Do you find, we know Jen Cohen is just came on the podcast. She was saying how she lost business, and she's got about 500,000 followers on Instagram, and then she's got about, she had Tony Robbins on her podcast, huge podcast. We'll overtake her one very soon. But how are you
promoting her on our podcast?
What are you telling these people when they're saying, "Well, I'm going to lose contracts"? I mean, our life, thank God that we run a very successful financial services company. We're not really. This is a negative. This is really our nonprofit arm. This and helping people. We get texts all the time. Hey, we're going through serious financial struggles. Can you help us? And that's something that we take on on a call. I mean, I would say a revenue on the firm to help people through financial stress. Not money revenue, but life revenue and meetup revenue. But how are you telling these people who don't want to stand up because they're scared to lose their occupation? They're scared to lose contracts and bids from other companies. What are you telling those?
Yeah, it can be scary. Look, we've spoken to many prominent people. StandWithUs has built a very extensive platform on social media. We've got 1.3 million followers on Instagram, 1.6 on Facebook, all across the digital platforms. We've had 1 billion interactions since October the 7th. People are turning to us for information. They want to engage. They want to get the information. They don't necessarily trust the information they're seeing from mainstream news, and they want to hear the real information and share critically, to share that important and truthful information. And we've also engaged with a lot of influencers, and some of them have told us, yes, they've lost tens of thousands of followers as a result of speaking out. At the end of the day, my advice to ordinary people is, don't be a hero, don't put yourself in danger. But to people who have a platform, or people who feel relatively secure, and people who can do it, yeah, use your platform, speak up, because at the end of the day, these are followers. And quite frankly, if you have anti-Semitic followers, those aren't the kind you want. If you've got anti-Semitic colleagues, those aren't the people you want to be working with. I mean, surround yourself with the people you want to be with, right?
We say the same thing for clients. If clients have a problem with who we are, that's not someone we want to work with.
Yeah, and the word is out, by the way, about you guys, that you're proud Jews. So, people know. People know.
People know.
The word is out.
People know. I think when you go on Fox, and it got like 30 or 40 billion views. That one little Fox, it was actually a very funny story. So I go on Fox, and they're like, okay, prepare your talking points. I've never been on national radio. I've never been on national media. I went on Reshet Bet, but is that really radio? Whatever. It is, but it isn't. So I go on Fox. They're like, okay, what do you want to talk about? I said, okay, I want to talk about this and this and this. And then I get to Fox 3:00 in the morning, and they go, I'm watching Fox News, and they go, okay, President Herzog just spoke to the Knesset and spoke to the people. We're going to hear the thoughts of ISIS coming back to the region from an IDF lone soldier. And I go, am I the IDF lone? Like,
who else is here to talk about that?
You're talking to me, and I have my thoughts already prepared. I'm like ready to go. I'm practiced. So they ask me the question. I don't even acknowledge the question. I just go right in, because that's really what it is. And all of a sudden, it just picks up.
Look, you served in Israel, so obviously you're the ambassador of Israel to the United States.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And people ask me, like,
just while you're saying that, yeah. There's something in that, because one of the things we do here in Israel is train Israelis to be better ambassadors for their own country. Israelis are incredible. We work with Israeli young people, and I meet thousands and thousands of them in any given year. And you know what it's like? It's like Alice in Wonderland, right? 12 impossible things before breakfast. They tell you about their own stories, and they're incredible. They're from every different background. They've done incredible things in the army, as I'm sure you did. They have this wealth of experience, even at a young age, that would just, it doesn't compare to their American or global counterparts. And they'll tell it to you very matter-of-factly, like, yeah, this is me. and you'll be like, whoa, this is incredible. Like you have this amazing, rich experience. And you didn't even know it. You just thought it was like the most matter of fact thing. But the fact that you lived in this country and grew up with these challenges, and you never know what's going to happen when you wake up in the morning by the end of the day on a geostrategic level, let alone what's happening in Israeli politics and every other aspect of society. It's an incredible thing. So Israelis are very special people. That's why I wrote a book about it. But I'm not surprised they turn to you for these questions, because your service is something that marks you out compared with your peers. I'm confident in that.
Absolutely. And I feel that way too. We just got interviewed by, we talked to a lot of business owners. We are, I would say, leaders in the business owner community, especially on the pro-Israel advocacy. That's really where our base is, and that's where really our followers come from, all business owners across the world, entrepreneur organization, just clients of ours. We have 1,600 clients of our own, and they look to us. They're calling us all the time. Hey, what do you think about this? Someone said this to me. One person said, like, okay, well, they're saying that Israel committed genocide. How do I respond to that? And I'm like, but you're Jewish. Like, you don't, like, what are you talking about? Or they're putting swastikas around the corner for me. What do I do? I said, call 911, like, call your people, like, call the police.
But to your point, Michael, it's actually very interesting to know Yair Kleiman in high school before he went to Israel, and to know him when he came back from Israel after he was in yeshiva in the north for a year. Then he went to be a lone soldier for, I guess, 2 years and travel a little bit after that.
Doesn't even know my timeline.
I got 6 kids. What do you want from me?
This is my father.
What do you want from me? But to know Yair when he came back and who he was at that point versus who he was before he left is like, it was fascinating.
Yeah, I'm not surprised for a minute. And it gives you so many different things. And that's what's incredible about the Israeli people. We're talking about resilience, right? And we called it in our book, Is Resilience, right? This incredible, resilient country that is a combination of our, 3,000-year-old plus Jewish history, our multicultural society, our incomparable challenges, security challenges in this region, the tapestry of people that we are in this country and what everyone brings to bear, and our daily life. I mean, this is an incredible cauldron for the creation of a uniquely resilient people. And you don't have a choice. You have to have stores of resilience. You have to build that resilient muscle in order to be Israeli. So,
I would say another unique aspect is the compassion that the Jewish people have. I mean, who else is looking, when you're going into bombing, who else is thinking, how can we bomb less? How can we do this? The compassion that Israel and the Jewish people have shown over going to other countries and bringing in refugees from Ethiopia and, all of everything. It's just an incredible, it's just when you scratch the surface of who we are, it's just amazing.
Yeah. Israelis love, and they love to be loved. So, we in our book, we compare Israel to its emblem, right? You've got these, the French have the fleur de lis, right? Each country has like a national symbol. And Israel has the symbol of the sabra, right? The prickly pear, the prickly pear. It's, spiky on the outside and soft and warm on the inside. That's Israelis. You brush up against them and you think maybe they're rude, or, they cut in front of you in line, or whatever it may be. And yet get to know them. I mean, when we would be pushing our child in a stroller in the street, and if I hadn't put socks on the kid, or there was something that any passerby thought I hadn't done right, they would be the first to tell me, right? When I lived in London, I could have passed out on the street and 20 people would have walked on my body before maybe somebody came to help. In Israel, it's just a whole different mentality. And so even with people who were our enemies, and as you saw just before, all of this happened, with the outbreak of the Abraham Accords, right? Israelis flocked to the Emirates. They showed love to anyone coming here from the Arab world. They want to be loved and just to be, treated on a normal human level, on an even playing field. And that doesn't often happen.
Yeah, I find the Gulf states look to Israel to end radical terrorism, and they look to Israel because they are the most successful. Them and Saudi Arabia are really the most successful in getting rid of, let's say, Muslim Brotherhood and some of these really like global terrorist factions. And the Gulf states love Israel for doing that. And Israel's also, it's really interesting. Israel also shares weaponry. They share technology with these countries. And we find that bringing commerce and bringing unique trade and unique abilities from each of these countries actually can create peace. It's something that it's really interesting. I find riches, and that's part of the reason why we call it resilient riches, is you're able to unite people through commerce. If you look at a pencil, for example, you get the graphite from one country, you get the wood from another country, you get the paint from another country. These countries could be in war today. The eraser comes from another country. These countries could be in war, but because of commerce, they're actually able to unite. And that's what's so symbolic about the Israeli people, that they say, okay, forget the past, let's engage in commerce and let's bring everybody together. What you're doing is the same thing. I find it the same thing. You're teaching that let's come together and have conversation. And when we spark conversation, if we put a lot of smart people together, we're going to create something better than ourselves. And it's Jeff Bezos who went on Lex Friedman's podcast. He says problem solving, group problem solving is one of the most enjoyable activities you could possibly have. And that's really what they did. And that's really what you're doing. How are you teaching? I know the book is called Is Resilience. How are you teaching resilience when it really comes tough to these university students? How are you teaching it to your students? And I wouldn't say probably you have students probably 80 years old. So I wouldn't say just university students, but you're teaching to engage in conversation, but engage in a fruitful conversation and beneficial conversation. What is the next stages of those conversations, and how are you teaching resilience to them?
I think just before you go on to that question, this is very interesting, just to talk to your point. And I think when the Israelis left Gaza and they left a huge, beautiful infrastructure that was quickly destroyed, I think that's what they were thinking of doing. They want to give this infrastructure. Here is a gift we're giving you. Let's work out economically together. And you could see, I mean, at that point, obviously, Hamas had no interest. They just destroyed everything that was there. The irrigation that had been built up, all the infrastructure that had been painstakingly built up was destroyed in a moment. And I also think, I was just having this conversation with someone the other day, the other Arab nations, they love what Israel is doing now, because now Israel is destroying all these people that everybody doesn't want. Nobody wants them. And now Israel all the other Arab nations can blame Israel. Oh, well, it's the Israelis that are doing it. But they're also, I think, behind the scenes, they're encouraging as well. But let's get back to the question.
Yeah, no, without a doubt on that. And the truth is that the countries you mentioned that are now at peace and normalization, and it's a real peace, it's a warm peace with Israel, are countries that have put their own prosperity and their own future above the pettiness of radicalism. Whereas the Palestinian leadership, the Iranian leadership, the compromised Lebanese leadership with Hezbollah have not been able to do that. And that's why all of these kind of peace to prosperity plans are good in name and they're the right thinking, but only for a society that's decided to embrace prosperity and put, the kind of things that we value above the things that drive them in terms of their Islamic fundamentalism. And so when they change that, then there'll be peace. It won't come before that. You make peace with your former enemies, not with your enemies, right? And so those countries have agreed to be former enemies and decided, actually, we're going to benefit much more from this than if we were at war and conflict with Israel. And I think, by the way, those Abraham Accords will grow. And I do think that Saudi normalization will take place despite the post-war effects of October the 7th.
I think the Saudis are excited to normalize ties. And I think, they're unbelievably progressive and unbelievably smart with the next stages of their lives. Look at what they're doing around the world. They're investing. The prince is really, these are really impressive people. I would like him on the podcast. That would be an interesting interview.
But what you're saying is actually totally correct, because we had Eitan, I forget his last name.
You can't remember my last name.
Can't remember whatever. But he also mentioned, like, in the school books for the kids, there in the math question is, you have 10 Jews, you kill 7. How many Jews are left? Until that is changed in their educational system, exactly what you're saying, until they want to embrace prosperity and become former enemies and change that whole, that's from kindergarten. Until they change that, it can't work.
Yeah, I agree. And so in terms of giving resilience to people, you're completely right in that it's about the people to people connections. It's about understanding and learning from. And so for us, it was important that, Jews and Israelis aren't just accepted, we're respected. And so over the years, Israel's been called the chosen people, the people of the book, the startup nation, all true and all great. But we would love people to be known by the term Israelis, and for them to see Israelis as people who they should look up to and respect. The late Princess Diana called Israel a plucky little nation, right? Which is quite a nice terminology for us. And so we try and teach people what resilience is. It's instead of bouncing back, it's bouncing forward, because you come up against adversity or challenges, Israelis regularly do. And they don't just, you don't lose that. It still stays with you. You don't bounce back to the person that you were before. You bounce forward to somebody new and hopefully somebody stronger. And Israelis have the ability to do that, to compartmentalize, but not to ignore. Yes, to grieve. And we're in an incredibly painful time right now where we're losing too many of our young people, and particularly our young men in service of defense of our freedom. To grieve, to be in that moment, but not to crumble, and to take a hardship, but build upon it. And that's been the story of how Israel has taken these terrible hardships and then skyrocketed to success. So in our book, we outline the 3 keys to Israel's resilience. They're empathy, flexibility, and meaning making. Empathy, to be able to be conversant in one's emotions, to identify your own feelings, to be open to other people's feelings, to really understand what you're going through in that challenging moment. And Israelis are very open with their feelings. They show their joy, they show their pain, they show you when they're frustrated, etc. Flexibility is the second key. The idea to, you go down a path and there's an obstacle in front of you. Do you stop, or do you find a way to get around that obstacle? Well, as you'll know from your army service, or anyone who spent time in Israel, Israelis are uniquely able to find their way around, find that solution, and get to that point where they get something done.
There's a line that they say in the army: "Mashalo vedim koach o vedim yoter koach." What doesn't work with strength works with more strength. I'm like, that's not really how to build a house, but whatever.
Right, but Israeli kids in school are taught hakol ani yachol. I can do anything. I can do anything, and that
comes from the Jewish
attitude.
mother. That's from my Jewish mom. My mother also. I can be anything I want.
Right, and look at you guys now. So it's true. And then thirdly, we talk about the third key. So there's empathy, flexibility, and meaning making, and that's an idea that's been true throughout Jewish history. Viktor Frankl spoke after the Holocaust about making meaning from the most traumatic of events. That even, you could survive the Holocaust, but you can survive it by holding on to an idea that you're going to make meaning of some of this terrible thing that happens to you. And then you can withstand just about everything. So he was living proof of that. And when bad things happen to good people, we don't have the answers. We may have none of the answers, but as long as we can take that and try and make something from it. And that's been also a very uniquely Israeli thing. We don't wallow in our self-pity. When we don't want to be seen as victims. We want to be seen as strong, and we want to move ahead, always moving forward. That's in one direction. So those are the keys to what we call Israel's resilience.
I love what you're saying, and I love that you're saying that you're able to, when you do overcome obstacles, you're able to step up, and nothing really breaks you anymore. When you overcome the Holocaust or you overcome real challenges, nothing breaks you before. You don't even realize how serious the challenges that you've overcome and how that really just builds your character and builds resilience. We had struggles with finance. Now, finance is not something that we struggle with. Thank God, Leah and her. Hopefully, it only continues. Keep it coming.
All those 3 factors that you've mentioned, that's what applies. And I think, that's what we talk about also, and just in financial services and resilient riches. It's not just in Israel, but, not just for Israelis, but it's for everybody. And this is actually what we teach as well. Go around it. Don't let it get you down. Don't let it stop you. You're more than that. Move forward. Have empathy with your feelings. Money talks. Talk about your feelings. Talk about how you're feeling about your money situation. When you try to hide it, that's the worst.
Now, Michael, what is your? I mean, you fight. You're a fighter. I mean, not the hugest shoulders, but you can probably hold your own. But you talk about exactly. That's the mean phase.
Just broaden them out for those who can't see. Yeah.
What was your, now that you talk about the Israel people and how they were able to overcome and their moments that allowed them to be resilient, what is your moment in your life? What was that defining moment in your life that you said, I will be resilient? Because I have a 1-year-old baby, and even to just take him down the street is tough. So you did it with a 9-month-old, which is very serious. But how did you build this resilience for yourself? What was that defining moment, that struggle in your life that said, I can never look back?
So I think that it's all about upbringing. And, that can be the people around you. It can be your parents. And one of my earliest memories is being taken on a flashlight parade, we called it, in the streets of London for Soviet Jewry. So you're too young to remember, but your father does, and I do.
Absolutely.
And we went out on the streets. We made a big deal about our brothers and sisters that were being held in the Soviet Union and couldn't get out to the free world, and certainly couldn't get out to Israel. And so I think that being taught that activism gave me a gene that has led me to the point I am in right now. And so I always felt it was important to stand up for our people and for our rights. And like, many people, many Jews, I've experienced anti-Semitism myself. And it never felt right that was being treated or looked at the world as some kind of like second-class racism, that it wasn't as important as racism or discrimination towards anyone else. And so that always rankled in me, and that led me to the point whereby we came to Israel and we made the decision we make. I never felt like we were running away from anything. I felt we were being pulled towards something, and that was what was underpinning our aliyah. And that's what's taken me now to, continents around the world to speak on behalf of Israel. It's what's taken me to the halls of the UN, to the Parliament building, to the Knesset, to be able to make the case for us because of that injustice. I was in the Palais des Nations in Geneva, in the United Nations there, and we were there to counter the World Conference Against Racism, which was basically turned into a demonization of Israel, as if the only place on earth where racism exists is Israel, right? And all of these anti-Israel countries were the ones who were hosting this conference, and the guest of honor was the Iranian president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. So he was the guest of honor at the World Conference Against Racism. So go figure. And we were there to protest it. And I was inside the hall, and Elie Wiesel, the late Elie Wiesel, Holocaust survivor, Nobel Prize winner, author, philosopher, amazing person, was there. And I went over to speak to him because, he's a hero. And as I'm going towards him in the hall, I see a bunch of people coming towards him as well. And I think, okay, more fans of Elie Wiesel. But they're actually chanting at that moment. And the thing they're chanting is towards Elie Wiesel, Nazi, Nazi, Nazi. It was members of the Iranian delegation and the Palestinian delegation who were calling Elie Wiesel a Nazi in the heart of the United Nations. You almost couldn't make it up. But that for me is indicative of this world we live in. It's a world turned upside down where we have to draw strength from each other, and we have to stand up, and we have to say, we're not going to accept this. We're not going to accept that in 193 countries, the only one that is demonized on this level and unfairly is the world's only Jewish country. We accept fully that Israel has absolutely, no reason why our country should be boycotted or maligned in the way that it is. It's rank anti-Semitism. And so it's always been important for me to call that out. And I hope that in some way, the movement that we've built within Stand With Us, and it's a lot of people, an incredible amount of people who form our leadership team and our staff and our student volunteers and our community volunteers, all of them, I hope that we've been able to collectively build this army of educators that is so important and give people the strength and the wherewithal and the power to push back against what is something that we all need to take a stand against.
It comes back to the beginning of our conversation, and I see is that you said the way to eliminate a virus is with light. And that's really what you're doing. You're teaching people the good. You're not teaching people the bad. You're not saying, let's negatively erase other people and counteract. And that's really what we've been talking about this entire time. It's been only positivity and yes, we have freckles, but we have beautiful faces, and Israel has a beautiful face, and Jews have a beautiful face. And people who stand for truth and good and love and life are beautiful people, and we love them. And that's really what this has all been about.
But you need the information and the weaponry to stand up against the bully.
Absolutely.
They're just bullying.
And while we're saying this, I would remind your listeners that they can go to StandWithUs.com and they can get information and booklets and brochures and fact sheets and send us their questions. And if they want to get up-to-date information on the current conflict in Israel, they go to StandWithUs.com/situation room.
Perfect.
And they'll be able to get all the updated information they may need. Course, if they want to, they can also support our cause and support what we're doing as well.
So we're going to support your cause also. My dad and I are going to give you $1,000. We do it for people that we care about and love, and just to do something with it. If you have a specific place that we can go, and hopefully we can get other people as well. I know we've gotten some significant donations from our listeners or Friends of United Hatzalah. Eitan Shadiad also got some people were reaching out to him about helping him change the narrative, which is really, really what we're trying to do. I was going to ask your plug, but you gave it. But tell us if you have other plugs. Where can people buy your book, Is Resilience? Where can people get involved, and how can people be advocates?
Yeah, Is Resilience is what Israelis can teach the world. Is out now on hardcover, paperback, and audiobook, and you can get it on Amazon or go to isresilience.com. And at standwithus.com, you'll get the links to all of our videos and our booklets and our brochures. And please do get engaged with us. And of course, follow us on social media and share. If you see great information, if something impacts you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it all across your networks. We're much stronger together.
Yeah, we'd love to buy some books of yours, and we're going to send out to clients. I always get overly optimistic with book buying and getting harassed.
We'll start slow.
Dad, how many books should we get and send them to clients?
I don't want to say because they're going to rip me. I'm saying
how many thousands do you want?
Let's start with 10 and we'll go from there.
We'll start with 10. We'll send to clients. We'll go from there. But it's exactly the book. Somebody else is making me buy 100 books, which I'm very upset about because it's like I'm giving directly to the soldiers.
Well, you'll take 10 and then you'll find you'll want to buy 100. But the key thing is that we tell the real stories of Israel, of the diversity of Israelis from all different backgrounds. The youngest is in her 20s. The oldest is in her 90s. But you'll see how we weave the story of Israel throughout this whole thing. That you really get a sense of who the Israeli people are, and you learn the essential resilience skills from the amazing Israeli people that you can apply in daily life.
Well, we appreciate
to get it.
Yeah, actually, me too.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it. I'm going to see you in Israel next week. So
looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. Maybe
coming. People should come to Israel.
I have to.
We love to see everyone.
I have 2 young babies, and I said to my wife, I have to. I already raised about $25,000. I'll probably have another couple grand just in the next 5 minutes to get soldiers. We're going to visit I'm doing it by myself. I'm not doing it with a coalition or a group. I'm doing it by myself just to make it my own. I'd love to see you. Would love to take pictures, send it out to our people. We can, if you want to do it, we'll come on your podcast. If you want us to come to, if I qualify, my dad's not coming in. But
this time. Next
time. We'll see you next. We'll see you both next.
We'll see you next time. Michael, thank you so much. I have so many more questions for you, but we want to be conscious of your time. We'd love to hear, especially about you and what you're doing and the impressions you're making, because 1 billion impressions, the algorithm is not in our favor, but when you have good information, the algorithm is really doing something for the Jews. And people want to hear it.
Who've been sharing our content. Justin Bieber, the Kardashians, major people, Brooklyn Beckham, huge celebrities who wanted to, found something powerful in it that they wanted to show support with Israel, have been sharing our content.
That's amazing.
That's great. Super important. Great to meet you. Thank you for
Michael,
coming.
Thanks so much for coming, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.